Hello, this is part 2 of my analysis of every Pokemon in competitive Gen 2. Today, I will be having a look at every fully evolved Gen 2 Pokemon. I did every fully evolved Gen 1 Pokemon in part 1, which is linked in the description. Once again, I will be covering the Smogon formats and discussing what tiers all the Pokemon get used in. I'll put a Pokemon's basic information on screen and show replays featuring the Pokemon. As with part 1, explanations for competitive Pokemon jargon and GSC UUBL are in the description. Now, let's begin. Meganium is a rare sight in GSC OU. Meganium is very similar to Venusaur, but is more effective than it in certain roles. Because it lacks Venusaur's poison typing, it is not weak to Psychic and actually resists ground. This makes it superior against Pokemon like Marowak, Rhydon and Exeggutor. Meganium is far more effective at using Sword Stance because of its access to Earthquake and its typing. Meganium's good bulk makes it easier for it to get multiple Sword Stances off. Its typing also lets it go toe to toe with Pokemon like Zapdos and Raikou. This set is dominated by Skarmory though, and it can be dealt with by Status and Explosion. Meganium can also run a generic bulky set with moves like Leech Seed and Reflect. As with Venusaur, it's hard to build a good team with Meganium. You have to accommodate its issues. Sword Stance requires a lot of support, while Meganium's tanky set is passive and invites Pokemon in like Forretress. Typhlosion might seem appealing due to its move pool and speed, but it's a pretty garbage Pokemon in GSC OU. Typhlosion struggles to get onto the field and is very prediction reliant. It's very inconsistent at breaking through Pokemon like Snorlax, Starmie, Vaporeon and Zapdos. Typhlosion is also relying on inaccurate moves like Fire Blast and Dynamic Punch. Other Sunny Day attackers like Moltres and Entei are largely better than Typhlosion is. There is some hope for Typhlosion though. Typhlosion wouldn't be overpowered in GSC UU. There has been some real interest in dropping Typhlosion to UU recently. While it does look scary, Fire types struggle in UU and Typhlosion matches up poorly against big UU Pokemon like Blastoise. Despite its NUBL status, Feraligatr has established itself as a decent UU Pokemon. When NU was revamped in 2018 though, Feraligatr was never used in UU, so it dropped to NU. Feraligatr didn't even last 3 months in NU before getting banned. Feraligatr was just way too good and hard to KO. Nowadays in UU, Feraligatr uses a Screech set, which can let it get by Pokemon like Blastoise and Hypno. It has Stab Hydro Pump for ground types, Earthquake for electric and poison types, and Rock Slide for flying types. Feraligatr's good bulk and Rock Slide make it a pretty good answer to Scyther. Feraligatr has a lot of potential, but it can be hard to use it. It's unreliable at beating Pokemon like Slowbro and Mr. Mime, while Blossom counters it. It despises being statused, is weak to electric, and has worse longevity compared to other water types like Gyarados. Before its ban, Furret was generally considered to be the best Pokemon in GSC PU. Furret was an incredible Pokemon because of its strength and versatility. Stab Double Edge is always very nice to have, and Furret could run Surf or Rock types like Magcargo and Rhyhorn. Furret is naturally fast and has decent physical bulk, so it could check Pokemon like Venomoth and Murkrow. Furret often acted as a curse user, but a basic Rest Talk set with Double Edge and Surf was still very good. Furret demanded respect in the team builder and it could be hard to consistently deal with. Furret was officially banned on April 9th, 2024, after several tournaments without Furret were held. In NU, Furret isn't bad per se, but it has to compete with so many other normal types. Furret's decent physical bulk makes it a good answer to Stantler and gives it an edge in Curse Wars. Noctowl is technically viable in NU, but it isn't very good at all. When compared to other cursed normal types, Noctowl has high special defense and a spikes immunity. It also has annoying weaknesses to rock, electric and ice, and loses Curse Wars because of its low attack and defense. Its viability is low, and as such, it's in PU. Noctowl's Curse Rest Talk set is far more effective in GSC PU. Noctowl is naturally hard to break for many Pokemon and doesn't have that many hard stops. Noctowl naturally checks Pokemon like Venomoth and Murkrow and is an effective status absorber. Noctowl is a Pokemon that must be respected, and if you forego answers to it, it will simply set up and run you down. Ledian is a baton passer in GSC NU. Ledian is focused on passing defensive boosts to its teammates in addition to the usual agility. It can buff physical defense with barrier and special defense temporarily with light screen. Ledian's barrier boosts are notable for letting teammates better survive explosions and take hits from set of Pokemon. Pokemon like Cubone threaten to run entire teams over if passed in agility. Ledian is ultimately rare in NU because Agility Pass struggles as an archetype. NU is a faster paced tier where Explosion and Set of Pokemon are common, so Baton Pass can struggle to get going. Ledian itself is a garbage Pokemon that can't use attacking moves effectively. Ariados is an even rarer Baton Passer in GSC NU. Ariados is often omitted from Agility Pass teams because its Spiderweb passing isn't as useful as other pass types. Ariados ultimately ended up in PU, and it was so annoying there that Spiderweb plus Baton Pass were banned from being used on the same set. Ariados often took games over with its baton passing, and counterplay was limited. It could also tech for its counters. Roar Rhydon, for example, could be beaten with Giga Drain. Ariados itself is a decent enough Pokemon that can survive a few hits and pass agility in addition to Spiderweb. Spiderweb Pass had a negative impact on GSC PU and was banned on August 15th, 2024. Crobat is, for the most part, a pretty bad Pokemon in GSC UU. Crobat's offensive potential is torpedoed by its barren move pool. Crobat's best non-hidden power stab move is Wing Attack, and it gets barely any physical coverage moves. Poison Flying is a bad typing for the GSC UU metagame. Most Pokemon don't really care about Crobat and beat it without issue. Not all of them do, however. Crobat's high speed, stab Wing Attack, and access to Haze lets it counter Scyther, the most dangerous sweeper in GSC UU. It is also an effective pincer answer. Crobat is mostly outclassed as a bug check by Aerodactyl, but it has a few perks that make it preferred on hard stall teams. It matches up much better against Quillfish and has Haze to annoy Belly Drum Quagsire, a huge threat to stall teams. Crobat can even run Giga Drain or Hidden Power Grass to further annoy Quagsire. Lanturn can be a pretty obnoxious Pokemon in GSC UU. Lanturn is a tanky Pokemon with a great stab combination. Its stats and typing lets it check a variety of Pokemon, like Gyarados and Haunter. Lanturn is notable for being the best punish to the obnoxious Slowbro, easily switching in and forcing it out. Lanturn has Stab Thunder for all the water and flying types, and Surf to hit ground types like Nidoqueen and Piloswine. Lanturn is much better at threatening ground types when compared to other electric types. Its water resistance makes it a better long-term answer to Slowbro than Ampharos too. Lanturn still competes a lot with Ampharos though. Lanturn's much lower special attack means it's much worse at threatening Pokemon like Hypno and Mr. Mime. Lanturn is ultimately hard to fit due to its iffy matchup against Pokemon like Nidoqueen. Togetic is one of the only fully evolved Pokemon down in ZU. It is completely outclassed in both NU and PU. Its stats are pretty good when compared to most of the junk in ZU. Togetic can check a variety of Pokemon while acting as a win condition with Curse. Togetic can mess teams up once checks like Onix are removed. It can also use moves like Psychic, Encore, and Sunny Day plus Solar Beam. When ZU was created in 2020, Togetic was named the best Pokemon early on, but it declined to about number 3 as time went on. Togetic has fallen further with the recent ZU tier shifts. The tier has become much more power creep due to drops from PU, so Togetic is struggling much more. Zatu was known as the king of GSC NU for quite some time, but it's fallen from grace in the last year and a half. Zatu struggles to get by many Pokemon in NU, like Dugong, Wigglytuff, Porygon, and Rapidash. Its bulk isn't the greatest and other Pokemon can offer more offensively and defensively. Zatu is no longer the king of GSC NU. It is still quite good though. Zatu's Stab Psychic is one of the best ways to dispatch Weezing. It also hits fighting types hard. Almost nothing in NU resists Psychic, and Zatu is naturally among the tier's fastest Pokemon. Zatu is among the best ways to deal with the dangerous Kingler, and is pretty annoying for Rest Talk Stantler. Zatu often uses a Rest Talk set, giving it more longevity and status absorption. It can also drop Rest and use Thief, stealing leftovers from one of its checks. Thief Zatu often uses Confuse Ray, which can let Zatu bypass its answers with some good luck. Ampharos is a very solid Pokemon in GSC UU. Ampharos's bulk and typing lets it check a variety of Pokemon, including Electabuzz, Mr. Mime, Gyarados, Slowbro, and Haunter. This is a very handy set of Pokemon to check. Hypno can also check these Pokemon, but Hypno is much less immediately powerful than Ampharos. Ampharos's Thunder hits very hard, and of course ravages all the water and flying types. Ampharos's Thunder is strong enough to 3-hit KO even Hypno. Ampharos has a major downside though, it is countered by the very common Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen isn't a perfect answer, with Hidden Power Water dealing decent damage on the switch, but it's pretty good at bullying Ampharos. Nidoqueen makes it far harder to fit Ampharos onto teams. Blossom is a decent Pokemon in GSC UU. Blossom's Monograss typing gives it notable resistances to water, electric, and ground. Blossom naturally has decent bulk and access to instant recovery with Moonlight. It can make up for its low speed with Stun Spore, which also functions as support for Pokemon like Bellydrum Quagsire. With Sword Stance, Blossom can act as a bulky, status-spreading sweeper. It sets up on Pokemon like Blastoise and eventually overpowers them. Blossom has several things going against it though. Paralysis is very annoying for it and makes switching Blossom into Thunder users more risky. It only has APP on Moonlight and that tends to run out fast. Prominent Pokemon like Quillfish, Haunter, Piloswine, and Miracleberry Scyther are annoying for it, though the former two dislike paralysis. Azumarill is a terrible Pokemon in GSC NU. If PU had active tiering, Azumarill would have certainly dropped there. It's a complete blob in NU. NU Azumarill is very passive and easy to abuse. It is easy setup for Pokemon like Wigglytuff, Porygon, and Kingler. It offers little over actually good water types like Octillery and Dugong. Light Screen is kinda cool, but not nearly enough to justify Azumarill. You can also just use something like Stantler if you really want Light Screen. Azumarill does get Parashong and Whirlpool, but it's worse at using these moves than Dugong is. The best way to use Azumarill is to just say screw it and run Belly Drum on Agility plus Baton Pass teams. GSC NU Sudowoodo seems promising at a glance. It's a physically bulky rock type in a metagame full of normal types. It also has self-destruct off its base 100 attack stat. Sudowoodo has a lot of issues though. It actually struggles to break a lot of the tier. It can actually break normal types like Wigglytuff and Porygon without killing itself with self-destruct. It has a similar issue with Octillery. Sudowoodo competes heavily with other rock types. Graveler has Rapid Spin, a stronger Boom, and an electric immunity, while Pupitar has higher speed, Screech, and Stab Earthquake. Because Sudowoodo has to boom to get by a lot of the tier, its potential is limited. Politoed is a strange Pokemon in GSC UU. In theory, Politoed can sweep on both the special side with Growth and the physical side with Belly Drum. In practice, the Growth set is severely flawed and hard to fit onto teams, and the Drum set is outclassed by Quagsire. Politoed is much less good in practice than in theory. Politoed's best niche is actually that of a Baton Pass recipient. Pokemon like Mr. Mime or Giraffare can pass Amnesia or Barrier to Growth Politoed, making it very hard to KO while it threatens to run teams down. Baton Pass teams with Politoed have emerged as legitimately dangerous teams in the last few months. Politoed has quite the history with Baton Pass. It was almost always used with Belly Drum on Agility Pass teams before they got banned. Jumpluff is a decent Pokemon in GSC UU. Jumpluff brings a lot of utility and support. It is one of the fastest Pokemon in UU. It is one of the few Pokemon faster than Scyther. It can switch into Scyther or Pinsir as they use Sword Stance and shut them down with Encore. It can spread status with Stun Spore and force switches with Leech Seed. Jumpluff's bulk is fine, and it has an always great spikes immunity. It can keep itself healthy with Synthesis. Jumpluff is an appealing option for some slower paced teams. Its paralysis support and Scyther checking is of great use for Pokemon like Bellydrum Quagsire. Jumpluff is ultimately uncommon though. It can't really fit an attacking move, so it's passive and not really cared about by rest talkers. It's also completely ruined by paralysis, and its 8th Synthesis PP can run out due to its average bulk. Aipom is a baton passer in the lower tiers. In PU, Aipom is a decent user of agility plus baton pass. PU baton pass is in a better spot compared to other tiers, due to more limited counterplay and the variety of passers available in PU. Aipom still hasn't been seen that much though, and it just missed the cutoff to be PU on the VR, eventually dropping to ZU. In ZU, Aipom doesn't need Baton Pass to do well, it's just a naturally good normal type. It is similar to Meowth, trading a bit of speed and hypnosis for better bulk and power. Aipom seems to be doing very well in the new ZU. We will have to see how it does as the tier further develops. Sunflora is a very nice Pokemon in GSC PU. Sunflora's monograss typing and high special defense let it handle a variety of Pokemon. It checks top tier threats like Seadra and Elekid, as well as Pokemon like Rhyhorn, Cubone, Flaffy, and Ghastly. This is a very useful set of Pokemon to check. It helps Sunflora find itself on many teams. With growth, Sunflora can buff its Razor Leaf and Hidden Power Ice or Hidden Power Fire. Sunflora can also use Hidden Power Rock, which hits flying types and Venomoth in one slot. Sunflora has some big issues though. It struggles against the tier's 2 best Pokemon, Venomoth and Hitmontop. It also struggles with Noctowl and Magcargo and invites Delibird in. Choosing its hidden power type is also rough. Yanma is one of the worst Pokemon in the game. Yanma just has very little going for it. Its stats are poor, its typing is flawed, and its move pool is barren. Very few Pokemon above ZU power level have an issue with Yanma. It's very hard to get it onto the field, and it isn't even good if you get it in. Yanma is down in the pits of ZU, and it's never been that good there. It was only semi-useful when Poliwag was allowed. Yanma was one of the few Pokemon faster than Poliwag. It lost most of its use after Poliwag was banned, and now ZU has been power crept, so Yanma has an even tougher time keeping up. Quagsire is a legitimate part of 3 different GSC tiers. While it does have fairly average stats, its typing is universally great. It also gets some nice moves like Belly Drum and Haze. Quagsire is a good Pokemon in UU. It checks Pokemon like Ampharos, Nidoqueen, Magneton, Haunter, and Lantern. It can use Rest Talk on more general teams to act as a status absorber and better check these Pokemon. Alternatively, it can use a Belly Drum set on slower paced teams, which threatens to run teams over if used effectively. In OU, Quagsire is notable for walling Zapdos and Raikou. It's also an effective Tyranitar answer. Drum Quagsire has issues with Pokemon like Skarmory and Exeggutor, but it can be quite annoying for a lot of offensive and double electric teams. It appreciates paralysis and heal bell support. In Uberst, Quagsire checks the same Pokemon as in OU, Zapdos, Raikou, Jolteon, and Tyranitar. It's also annoying for several variants of Mewtwo and is decent versus Ho-Oh. Uber's Quagsire more commonly uses moves like Toxic and Haze. Uber's is a better environment for these kind of moves. Espeon is one of the more effective BL Pokemon in GSC OU. Espeon is an effective special attacker. Espeon is a naturally fast and powerful Pokemon, and it has growth to boost its special attack. Espeon's Stab Psychic hits big Pokemon like Machamp, Nidoking, and Gengar. Espeon can improve its longevity and match up against Pokemon like Machamp with Morning Sun, or alternatively, pass its special attack boost with Baton Pass. Espeon is an effective late game cleaner, and it can be a lethal Pokemon if given free turns. Espeon struggles with big OU Pokemon like Snorlax though, and it's neutered by paralysis. Espeon competes with Alakazam. Alakazam can sweep with growth, but it's faster, more immediately powerful, and has a better move pool. Umbreon is a purely defensive and supportive Pokemon. Umbreon is very naturally bulky on both the physical and special side. This, combined with its typing, lets it combat Pokemon like Nidoking, Exeggutor and Gengar. With Charm, Umbreon becomes a decent answer to non-belly drum Snorlax. With Pursuit, Umbreon can hurt Ghost and Psychic types as they flee from it. Umbreon's ability to pursue Ghost types is appreciated by Mono Snorlax and Rapid Spinners. Umbreon is a very passive Pokemon though. Its offensive stats are low and it has trouble fitting attacking moves. Umbreon's passivity can make it feel like a punching bag. It can get overwhelmed with Spikes Up. Umbreon used to be able to run Mean Look plus Baton Pass, but that has since been banned. Trap Pass Umbreon was a real headache when it was allowed though. Murkrow is a fine Pokemon in GSC PU. Murkrow is an offensive Pokemon with a bit of utility. Offensively, it has Stab Drill Peck for prominent Pokemon like Hitmontop, Venomoth and Sunflora. With Pursue, Murkrow can smack dark weak Pokemon like Drowsy, Ghastly and Abra as they flee. These Pokemon don't want to stay in out of fear of Hidden Power Dark. Pursue can also be used to just chip Pokemon fleeing from Murkrow. Murkrow can also use Haste to stop boosting Pokemon. It's a nice tool to have against Baton Pass teams. However, Murkrow struggles against some big Pokemon like Elekid, Seadra, Noctowl and Magcargo. Murkrow's bulk is not something to write home about. Slowking on its own is a great Pokemon in GSC UU. Slowking is tanky, especially on the special side, and good offensively. Its special attack is high and it has a great stab combination. Slowking is an effective answer to big UU Pokemon like Nidoqueen. The problem with Slowking is that it has to compete heavily with some of the best UU Pokemon. Slowbro is almost identical to Slowking and is often preferred for its higher physical bulk. Slowbro is better against Pokemon like Scyther, Pinsir, Granbull and Piloswine. Slowking also competes with Blastoise, who has higher speed and rapid spin, and Hypno, who lacks Slowking's electric weakness. Slowking has a few perks over Slowbro. Its higher special defense makes it superior against mixed attackers like Nidoqueen and Gyarados, and means it's better at tanking coverage electric moves. Slowking isn't a bad Pokemon, but there are few teams where it's the best choice. Misdreavus finds itself in OU because of its typing. It is one of only 2 ghost types in GSC. When compared to Gengar, Misdreavus is not weak to ground or psychic. Misdreavus is also slightly bulkier on the special side. Misdreavus is an appealing option for some defensive teams. It's able to block Rapid Spin and Explosion whilst stalling out Firelax. It can spread status with Toxic and remain healthy with Rest or Pain Split. Misdreavus can also use Perish Song plus Mean Look, though the majority of teams run a Phaser for it. Misdreavus is haunted by its low stats. It doesn't dish out much damage and is hit hard by many OU Pokemon. Unown is the worst fully evolved Pokemon in the entire game. It is weaker than the majority of Little Cup and not fully evolved Pokemon. The only thing Unown can do is fire off a 70 base power move off its low attack or special attack. Unown is so weak that its hidden power Psychic doesn't 2-shot Pidgey. Unown is also slow and frail. Unown can change its hidden power type, but because it loses Stab, it becomes even weaker. Unown is just completely worthless. There is no reason to use it in any GSC tier. It offers nothing over even the weakest Psychic types. Wobbuffet is the second worst fully evolved Pokemon in the game. Without Shadow Tag, Wobbuffet is worthless. Wobbuffet's only means of damaging the opponent, outside of Mimic I guess, is hitting damage back with Counter or Miracle. You can just switch around Wobbuffet and it can't do anything. Wobbuffet gives everything free turns. A Spiker can set up spikes versus it, a setup sweeper can freely set up versus it, and a weakened Pokemon can freely recover versus it. Gen 2 Wobbuffet doesn't even have Encore to stop setup. Wobbuffet is also ruined by Dark types, Thief, and Poison are born. Wobbuffet's natural bulk is actually quite respectable, but the fact that it gives everything free turns nukes its viability. GSC UU Girafarig is most famous for its usage of Baton Pass. Girafarig is an effective and dangerous Baton Passer. Girafarig's ability to pass Amnesia greatly helps Pokemon like Granbull and Politoed. Girafarig on its own is a fine Pokemon. It has fine speed and special attack, and has Thunder for both Haze users like Quillfish and Roar users like Gyarados and Aerodactyl. Girafarig doesn't need Baton Pass. It can run an all-out attacking set with moves like Earthquake, Thief, and Shadow Ball to decent effect. Girafarig used to be able to pass Agility, but Agility Pass was banned because it was far too annoying. You don't see Girafarig too often, as the teams it fits on can be risky, but it's a Pokemon you don't want to mess with. Forretress is a very big deal in GSC OU. Forretress is, along with Cloyster, one of the two big spikers in OU. Spikes are a move of incredible importance in OU. The chip they provide is invaluable. They make offensive Pokemon more dangerous and provide defensive Pokemon with more passive damage. The vast majority of OU teams will use a spiker. Compared to Cloyster, Forretress is more effective at playing longer games. Its toxic immunity is very notable and useful against defensive teams. Forretress is much harder for them to wear down. Forretress's normal resistance makes it better at switching into non-Firelax long term. It is also capable of tanking a Thunder from Zapdos or Raikou if necessary. Forretress also learns Rapid Spin, so it's capable of both spiking and removing spikes. Forretress is able to use Explosion alongside Rapid Spin, unlike Cloyster. Forretress is a really bad Pokemon to give free turns to. It's so bad that Forretress itself often runs Hidden Power Fire to two-shot opposing Forretress. Forretress is not as dominant as Cloyster for a few reasons. Cloyster is faster and brings more offense with its Surf plus Explosion combination. Forretress is slow, and its low special defense and fire weakness can be abused. Forretress is also a big deal in Ubers for most of the same reasons. Spikes are very important still, and Forretress still has some nice perks over Cloyster. The toxic immunity and normal resistance are still very big deals. Firelax is also largely unused in Ubers. Forretress is effective at bullying the new Celebi. GSC NU Dunsparce is similar to UU Slowking in the sense that it's a functionally good Pokemon overshadowed by a top threat. Dunsparce is an effective Curse Sweeper. It is naturally bulky, only weak to fighting, and has Stab Return in a tier where the normal resistant Pokemon are flawed. Dunsparce is almost identical to Wigglytuff. They have the same attack and speed, and almost the same bulk. Wigglytuff has a better move pool though. It learns Body Slam for paralysis and Double Edge for higher power. Dunsparce is stuck with just Return, making its Porygon matchup much worse. Wigglytuff is also slightly bulkier on the special side, so it's better against Pokemon like Octillery. Dunsparce is, however, slightly physically bulkier. This gives it the advantage in a Curse War against Wigglytuff, making Dunsparce one of the better Wigglytuff answers. The slightly higher physical defense can make it easier to take on Pokemon like Stantler or Dugtrio. Gligar is pretty good in GSC UU. Gligar's biggest asset is its typing. Gligar is immune to ground, and by extension spikes, as well as electric. Gligar is a very good check to Fire Blast variants of Nidoqueen. It is also effective against most variants of Quagsire and Electabuzz, as well as Sandslash. Gligar's good matchup against the most common Nidoqueen set makes it an appealing partner for electric types. While Gligar's attack is average, it has Screech to lower defense. It can also use Thief to steal leftovers from the water types it struggles against. Gligar can also use Hidden Power Rock to 2-hit KO Scyther and deal decent chip damage to Gyarados and Aerodactyl. Gligar still struggles with Slowbro and Blastoise. Piloswine is also a big issue. Gligar's special defense is low, so Pokemon like Mr. Mime naturally hit it hard. While it does well against Fire Blast Nidoqueen, it is favoured to be one-hit KO'd by Ice Beam variants. Steelix is a key Pokemon in GSC OU. Steelix is able to fulfill the role of a normal-resistant phaser, and as such, combats some Snorlax variants. +1 Earthquake fails to 2-shot Steelix, while it gets the Roar or Curse itself. Curse Rest Talk and Thunder Snorlax are also countered. Steelix's toxic immunity makes it hard to wear down for defensive teams. Steelix is also immune to electric while taking neutral damage from Hidden Power Ice, letting it take on Raikou and Zapdos. Steelix is able to generate offense with Roar, racking up Spike's damage as Pokemon switch in fear of it. Steelix further threatens teams with Explosion, which can be made more powerful with Curse. Steelix is very good at breaking holes for the offensive teams it finds itself on. These teams also appreciate its Snorlax matchup. Steelix is effective at removing the Skarmory on defensive teams. It can set up Curse, keep forcing it out with Roar, and eventually KO with Explosion after enough curses. Steelix has some headaches though. Being unable to KO Zapdos and Skarmory without Explosion is annoying. It matches up worse against the Electrics if they carry Hidden Power Water, and in general can be targeted by special coverage due to its low speed and special defense. Steelix is also switched into by Cloyster. Uber Steelix is very similar to OU. Firelax is unused, and Earthquake Snorlax is less common, so it can do even better against Snorlax. Granbull is a very big deal in GSC UU. Granbull can do several different things with itself. It is most often seen using some form of a Rest plus Sleep Talk set. Granbull is a natural check to Pokemon like Nidoqueen and Gyarados. With Curse, Granbull is a scary mono attacker that ravages most of UU. This set is most effective on stall teams with Pursuit support. Granbull can also use Thunder, which 3-shots Slowbro and 2-shots Aerodactyl, or Heal Bell to support its team. Granbull can also drop Rest and use Curse plus Hidden Power Ground. This set is deadly into many common teams. Granbull forces teams to prepare for it. It is a major reason why Pokemon like Haunter are so common. Granbull even used to be cited as the best Pokemon in UU, but it stumbled a bit more recently. Its low speed and special defense are exploitable, and teams are more prepared for it. Qwilfish is the only viable spiker in UU, and as such, it's at the very top of the tier. Spikes are a crucial component of GSC UU. They are crucial when making progress and breaking down defensive Pokemon. They make offensive Pokemon more deadly and bring more passive damage. Some of the best Pokemon in UU, like Nidoqueen, Gyarados, and Haunter, need spikes to function at their best. Spikes aren't mandatory, and there are good teams that drop Qwilfish, but most teams will use it. It helps that Qwilfish isn't useless outside of spiking. It's fast, and its Sludge Bomb is decently annoying to switch into, especially with its Poison Ray. It also 2-shots non-Quagsire ground types with Hydro Pump. Qwilfish can use Haze to remove setup boosts, but it is more often seen with Curse. Curse lets it pressure Blastoise, the only common spinner in GSC UU. Once Qwilfish has set up spikes, it can be used as a sacrifice to generate momentum. Qwilfish is arguably the most important and best Pokemon in GSC UU. Despite its good stats and typing, Scizor has its viability torpedoed by a barren attacking move pool. Its best stab attacks are Hidden Power Bug and Hidden Power Steel. Scizor would still struggle with Zapdos, Skarmory, and Fire moves if it had good attacks though. Scizor is thus relegated to Baton passing. Scizor is able to pass both Sword Stance and Agility. Pokemon like Marowak, Machamp, and Belly Drum Snorlax can become lethal with Scizor's boosts. Scizor itself resists normal, and by extension, Explosion. It can run Hidden Power Bug to destroy Exeggutor, or Hidden Power Fighting to hit Snorlax and Steelix hard. Both moves smack Tyranitar too. Scizor struggles to beat phasers though. Whirlwind, Skarmory, and Zapdos completely shut it down, while Golem and Steelix can be annoying. Shuckle, of all things, is the Pokemon viable in the most amount of GSC tiers. Shuckle is viable in every tier from NU to Ubers. Shuckle's astronomical bulk and useful typing give it some universally useful qualities. It is an effective answer to normal types, resisting normal and taking neutral damage from the ground moves many of them use. Shuckle is arguably the best Snorlax wall in the entire game. Its bulk lets it generally withstand anything without a stab, super effective hit or setup move. Shuckle is very effective at PP stalling thanks to Defense Curl, a move with over 60 uses. Shuckle is effective in NU and PU because of their lower power level. There have even been calls to ban it in these tiers. Shuckle should only be used on hard stall teams. It is incredibly passive. Toxic is Shuckle's best way of dealing damage, and Toxic doesn't work so well against rest users and Toxic immune Pokemon. Shuckle can still be broken by water types, Set of Pokemon, and Seismic Toss users. Heracross is a unique Pokemon in GSC UU. Heracross is a Pokemon that brings valuable defensive utility while threatening to sweep under the right circumstances. Heracross is an effective answer to Pokemon like Nidoking, Machamp, Tyranitar, and an unboosted Marowak. Its powerful Mega Horn rips Psychic and Dark types up. Unboosted Mega Horn can deal over 40% to Snorlax. Heracross can boost itself up with Curse, terrifying teams without a bug resist left. It can also use Seismic Toss, which provides consistent damage against Pokemon like Skarmory. However, Curse Heracross greatly struggles with the prominence of both Zapdos and Skarmory. Both Pokemon are big and common headaches for Heracross. Heracross can also struggle with Pokemon like Steelix, Moltres, and Charizard. Explosion can also be used to combat it. Heracross thus needs support. It is often paired with Pokemon like Curse plus Self-Destruct Snorlax, Steelix, and Exeggutor. In Ubers, Heracross still struggles with Zapdos and Skarmory, and now has to deal with Ho-Oh and Aeroblast Lugia. It can still sweep if its checks are removed though. Its Mega Horn also pummels Mew, Mewtwo, and Celebi. Sneasel is a below average Pokemon in GSC NU. Sneasel's typing and access to Moonlight lets it counter Zatu and Waldugong. Sneasel is very fast and has Screech to lower defense. Sneasel is almost impossible to slot on a good team though, so it's in PU. Sneasel is the fastest Pokemon in GSC PU. It can be an annoying Pokemon to handle because of its speed and access to Screech. Its high speed and access to Moonlight can answer Pokemon like Seadra or Murkrow. It has Stab Ice Beam for Grass, Flying, and Ground types. Sneasel all but requires spikes, limiting the amount of teams it can work on. Sneasel constantly has to watch for status. Paralysis badly ruins it. It also matches up poorly against the extremely common Hitmontop. Ursaring is not very good in GSC UU. While it does have an impressive attack stat, it is outclassed by Snorlax. Snorlax is bulkier, especially on the special side, and has more useful moves. Ursaring has to compete with even BL normal types like Porygon2 and Kangaskhan. Ursaring makes its team weaker to Pokemon like Machamp and provides little to no defensive utility. Ursaring's low viability has, ironically enough, led to some very scattered usage of it as a troll Pokemon. It's definitely not the worst thing you could bring. It can be kinda scary as a cursed normal who can phase with Roar. It's a very flawed Pokemon though, so keep your expectations low. Magcargo is similar to Parasect. They are both very slow Pokemon with average stats and a bad defensive typing. A defensive typing that gives them 2 4x weaknesses. Magcargo is, however, not bad in PU. Magcargo's typing and high physical defense lets it combat Pokemon like Venomoth, Murkrow, Sunflora, and Golbat. Its Stab Flamethrower is decently strong and hits grass types hard. Magcargo's typing still haunts it though. It matches up poorly against big Pokemon like Hitmontop and Seadra. Pokemon that it's supposed to be, like Murkrow and Venomoth, can run coverage moves like Hidden Power Water for it. Magcargo is often forced into using Acid Armor or Curse. Without them, it's a rock type that loses to Noctowl. Piloswine has seen some OU usage over the years as a ground type that's not weak to ice, but it's very flawed and hard to fit. Piloswine is a very notable Pokemon in UU though. Piloswine was initially uncommon, but it gained serious notoriety in late 2021. Piloswine was considered to be a top Pokemon for a while after, but it's recently declined. Piloswine is a fierce Pokemon because of its excellent stab combination and high attack. The list of Pokemon that can switch into Piloswine is limited. Piloswine's Ice Beam can be used to repeatedly fish for a freeze on one of its answers. Piloswine is also nice defensively. Its typing and serviceable bulk let it check a variety of Pokemon, like Mr. Mime, Ice Beam Nidoqueen, Gligar, Hypno, and Haunter. Piloswine can survive a boosted hit from Scyther and retaliate with Ice Beam. Piloswine struggles with water types though. Gyarados, Blastoise, and Slowbro are all hard matchups for it. Pinsir can also set up on it. Piloswine is much worse against electric types than Nidoqueen, being outsped and 3-hit KO'd by Magneton, Ampharos, and Electabuzz. You really gotta pair Piloswine with something like Ampharos, otherwise you can become seriously weak to electric types. NU Corsola might seem promising as a normal resistant Pokemon with Recover, but it's just not worth it. It gets destroyed by too many big Pokemon. Corsola still has a number of issues in PU. It faces competition as a rock type with Rhyhorn, hates status, matches up poorly against Hitmontop, Elekid, Sunflora and more, and struggles to exert pressure. It's not all bad though. Corsola learns one of the game's best moves in Recover. This grants Corsola longevity and makes it more annoying to KO. Corsola can check a few annoying Pokemon, like Noctowl, non-hidden power Ground Sea King, and Clefairy. Corsola needs Curse to function. Curse lets it actually check the mentioned Pokemon and makes it better at exerting pressure. Corsola is a nice pick on slower, more defensive teams. Wanna know where else Corsola can work? Ubers. Corsola is extremely rarely used in Ubers for its typing. Corsola can PP stall Mono Snorlax with Defense Curl, counter Ho-Oh, and spread status. Octillery is one of the best Pokemon in GSC NU. Octillery is, true to its design, a tank, and a damn good one at that. Octillery special attacks that is tied for the highest in the tier. Octillery Stab Surf hits fire, rock, and ground types super effectively, and isn't resisted by much. Octillery 3-shots most Pokemon. Octillery usually runs Hidden Power Electric, which 3-shots opposing Octillery and 4-shots Dugong. Ice Beam is also an option for the freest chance and better sleep talks against flying types and ground types. Defensively, Octillery can check fire types, ground types, Zatu, and more. Octillery is incredibly easy to fit onto teams. It brings so much value defensively while acting as one of the most difficult to answer offensive Pokemon. Octillery is slow, can't fit all the coverage moves at once, and competes with Dugong, but it's still one of the absolute best Pokemon in GSCNU. Delibird is the lowest ranked Spikes user in the game. Delibird is sometimes used as a spiker in NU. Compared to Pineco, Delibird is faster and can steal leftovers with Thief. Spikes is a great move in NU, just like in the other tiers. Delibird's better speed can let it set up spikes in some situations that Pineco can't. Pineco is still usually preferred though. It has important resistances to fighting and ground, can use rapid spin, and can explode. In PU, Delibird is the only Pokemon with spikes, giving it an exclusive niche. Spikes, as always, are a very good move for offensive and defensive Pokemon alike. It can be hard to fit Delibird though. PU has many threats to account for in the team builder, and Delibird doesn't really help in that regard. It's just not a good Pokemon outside of Spikes. It's frail, it's weak, and it's still outsped by several Pokemon. Spikes are definitely good in PU though. Delibird should be considered. Mantine is, surprisingly enough, a ZU Pokemon. Octillery and Dugong almost entirely outclass it in NU. They are more offensively potent and lack the crippling 4x electric weakness. Mantine is best on stall teams in NU. Its typing and access to Haze makes it a near perfect counter to Growth past Flareon. Haze is also generally useful for setup Pokemon. Dugong or Octillery are still largely better on stall though. They are much more generally useful. As for PU, the electric weakness is just too bad. Mantine is food for Elekid, Ghastly, and Hidden Power Electric Seadra. Mantine is outclassed and struggles to beat many big Pokemon. Even in ZU, Mantine is just good, it's not really considered broken. That could always change, ZU is in a fresh new period, but right now, Mantine is at the bottom of the barrel. Skarmory is a very important Pokemon in GSC OU. Skarmory is generally considered to be the best answer to the best Pokemon in OU, that being Snorlax. Skarmory is the most reliable answer to Earthquake variants of Snorlax. It resists normal, is immune to Earthquake, and hard to wear down because of its Spike's immunity. It can set up its own curse and phase Snorlax with Whirlwind. Skarmory can act as a late game win condition if counters to it are removed. Snorlax can run moves like Flamethrower, but you can pair Skarmory with Pokemon that beat the Snorlax variants. Pokemon like Tyranitar, Golem, or Mischievous can combat Flamethrower Snorlax. Skarmory's ability to counter Earthquake Snorlax makes it mandatory on stall teams. Skarmory can also check Pokemon like Exeggutor, Marowak, Heracross, and Quagsire. Skarmory should only really be used on defensive teams. It's a momentum sink that invites in Pokemon like Zapdos and Raikou, making it unsuited for offensive teams. In Ubers, Skarmory is less effective and mandatory. Its ability to beat Snorlax isn't as needed when you have Pokemon like Barrier Mewtwo and Lugia. It can still work on a few teams, but it's not the stall staple it is in OU. Houndoom is a very specific Pokemon in GSC OU. Houndoom's stat Pursuit is the most powerful in the game. With Pursuit, Houndoom deals massive damage to Pokemon like Exeggutor, Jinx, Gengar, and Mischievous as they flee in fear of it. None of these Pokemon can safely stay in. All of them fear Crunch, while Exeggutor and Jinx especially fear Fire Blast. Houndoom's ability to pursue these threats is appreciated by Pokemon like Mono Snorlax and Machamp. Houndoom is not worth much outside of Pursuit though. It is frail and struggles against Pokemon like Snorlax, Tyranitar, and Zapdos. Houndoom can struggle to even pursue. Gengar outspeeds and threatens it with Dynamic Punch or Hidden Power Water. Houndoom really wants something it can pursue. If there isn't something it can pursue, then it won't do much. Houndoom is a very matchup reliant Pokemon. Kingdra is almost never seen in GSC OU. Kingdra is outclassed by other water types. Suicune has better all-around bulk, Starmie has higher speed, recover and rapid spin, and Vaporeon can sweep with growth. Kingdra, like Suicune and Starmie, tends to invite in Pokemon like Snorlax and Raikou. It's not all bad though. Kingdra's solid stats and fantastic defensive typing lets it wrestle with Pokemon like Nidoking, Gengar, and Tyranitar. Kingdra's ×4 water resistance lets it stall out most Vaporeon sets. +5 Surf is only a 5-hit KO. Kingdra can also spread paralysis with Dragon Breath. Donphan is also a rare sight in GSC OU. Donphan is largely overshadowed by Golem. Both are rapid spin using ground types, but Golem brings explosion and a normal resistance. Golem is far easier to slot onto teams. Donphan used to be able to run Encore, but turns out you can only use that in the Japanese version of Pokemon Gold and Silver, so Donphan lost access to it. When compared to Golem, Donphan is not weak to ground or fighting, and less weak to water and grass. Donphan is better against Pokemon like Tyranitar, Steelix, and Rhydon. It's better at tanking Hidden Power Waters. Donphan is good as a spinner because it has Earthquake to pressure the spin blocking ghost types. Donphan can run a utility set with moves like Toxic, Protect, or Roar. It can also use Rest Talk for more longevity. Porygon2 is a decent Pokemon in GSC OU. Porygon2 has well-rounded stats and a great move pool. Porygon2's most notable move is Recover. Recover has 32 PP, thus making it very spammable and improving Porygon2's longevity. Porygon2 also learns Ice Beam, Thunderbolt or Thunder, and Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave pairs well with Recover, letting Porygon2 spam Recover until the foe is paralysed. Porygon2 is annoying to KO for a lot of the Pokemon. With Curse, it beats most variants of Snorlax, being particularly effective against Rest Talk sets without Curse. Porygon2 is hard to fit on teams though. It really hates status since it doesn't use rest and wants to stick around. It exacerbates a team's Machamp weakness and has trouble fitting all the moves at once. Porygon2 is prone to getting haxed since it wants to be on the field for so long. It gives opponents more opportunities to crit it. It also matches up much worse against certain Snorlax sets, like Lovely Kiss or Body Slam. Porygon2 used to be a bona fide OU Pokemon, but because of its flaws, it dropped to BL in 2019. Stantler has been cited as the second best Pokemon in GSC NU. Stantler's Rest plus Sleep Talk set is incredibly effective and obnoxious. It is potent offensively, Return isn't resisted by much, and most of those Pokemon are hit hard by Earthquake. Outside of the rarer Pokemon like Pidgeot or Shuckle, there aren't any big stops to Stantler. Stantler naturally 3-hit KOs most Pokemon in NU. Rest Talk Stantler is able to switch into Pokemon like Weezing, Dugong and Chinchou and then threaten them. Rest Talk Stantler is very easy to fit onto teams as a glue Pokemon. Rest Talk Stantler has had a large impact on GSC NU and is very influential in the team builder. It has largely replaced Stantler's other sets. Curse plus Light Screen used to be Stantler's big thing, but is now rarely seen. Stantler has a few things going against it. It doesn't match up that well versus Zatu or Fearow, a rest from it can be abused by curse users like Porygon or Wigglytuff, and is threatened by fighting types. These flaws don't stop Stantler though, it's one of the best Pokemon in GSC NU. Smeargle has the best move pool in the entire game, learning every move bar Explosion and Self-Destruct. Smeargle's not going to be doing much offensively or defensively with those stats, but it can support its team in several ways. Smeargle is just fast enough to outspeed several big OU Pokemon. It threatens to shut things down with Spore, a move it almost always carries. Smeargle often acts as a spiker. When compared to Cloyster and Forretress, Smeargle is more unpredictable and threatens sleep. Smeargle is also used to Baton Pass agility. It is effective at this because it can shut down phasers with Spore. It can run spikes and agility pass on the same set. You can run so many different moves on Smeargle. Sacred Fire can spread burn, Miracle, counter, or Destiny Bomb can get surprise KOs, Encore can punish setup, and Super Fan can slice up foes' HP in half. The list goes on. Smeargle's strength is its unpredictability. Smeargle's stats do hurt it a lot though. It's very frail and still outsped by several Pokemon. It can be a risky Pokemon to use. Hitmontop has been ranked as the best Pokemon in GSC PU. Hitmontop is just a very good Pokemon. It checks a lot and it's annoying to handle. Hitmontop's high special defense makes it an answer to Pokemon like Elekid, Sunflora, Magcargo and Flaffy. Hitmontop can be hard to immediately threaten. It can immediately threaten teams itself with its strong high jump kick. It backs this up with Hidden Power Rock for fighting resistant Pokemon like Venomoth or Golbat. It's just very hard to go wrong with Hitmontop. It's incredibly easy to fit onto teams as a glue Pokemon. Hitmontop is also quite nice in GSC NU. It probably could be NU if NU and PU had active tiering. Hitmontop is often who stall teams use as their rapid spinner. It's able to check Pokemon like Dugong, Chinchou and Magnemite. Its higher speed makes it generally effective at keeping Pineco spikes off. Hitmontop can also run a Curse plus Rest Talk set and more generic teams. This set matches up poorly against Pokemon like Zatu, but it can be effective if Pokemon like Zatu aren't present. It helps that it's a Curse user who can threaten Wigglytuff and Porygon. Miltank is one of the very few Pokemon blessed with Heal Bell. Heal Bell is a very useful supporting move. Miltank is able to wake up rested Pokemon and in general rid its team of status inflictions. Miltank is effective at enabling Belly Drum users like Quagsire or Snorlax. Miltank has good speed, defense, and instant recovery with Milk Drink. It can combat Curse Snorlax with Growl and check other Pokemon like Nidoking. Miltank can spread paralysis with Body Slam or alternatively run Earthquake for Gengar and Rock types. Miltank can be hard to fit onto teams though. It's a very one-dimensional Pokemon, only really doing well in one specific role. Its average special defense can be exploited by Pokemon like Zapdos. Miltank isn't good at dishing out damage and thus invites in annoying Pokemon. It is hard to build a good team with Miltank. Blissey isn't seen that much in GSC OU, with it being largely overshadowed by Snorlax. Snorlax is a specially bulky normal type with a far larger offensive presence. Blissey also competes as a special wall with Raikou. Raikou similarly has a much larger offensive presence and is much faster. Blissey struggles to do much to teams offensively. Blissey is not entirely outclassed though. While Snorlax can struggle to handle Pokemon like Zapdos or Raikou with spikes up, Blissey is almost impossible for them to break. It is generally effective at walling special attackers. Blissey has an instant, no drawback recovery move with Soft Boiled. Blissey is able to support its team with Light Screen. It can also act as a cleric with the incredibly rare Heal Bell. Blissey can run quite a few different moves. It is an effective counter user because of its gargantuan HP stat. It is an effective toxic spreader because it has Flamethrower for steel types. Blissey is mostly stuck on defensive teams, but it has been explored on more aggressive styles. Blissey is not a bad Pokemon in GSC OU, it is just specific and hard to fit onto teams. Blissey is ultimately the lowest ranked OU Pokemon on the viability rankings. Raikou is one of the best Pokemon in GSC OU. Offensively, Raikou has a high special attack stat and Stab Thunder or Thunderbolt. It complements this with either Hidden Power Ice, which hits most ground types and Exeggutor, or Hidden Power Water, which more seriously threatens rock ground types and hits Steelix. Raikou can also use Crunch. This gives it better sleep talks against Exeggutor and Jinx, and lets it fish for special defense drops on opposing Raikou. Raikou is incredibly fast. At base 150 in speed, it outspeeds the vast majority of Pokemon. Raikou is a potent special attacker that few Pokemon want to switch into. On the defensive side, Raikou's typing and high special defense makes it the best answer to Zapdos. It can also deal with Pokemon like Jinx, Gengar, Vaporeon, and several BL Pokemon. Raikou is most often seen using Rest plus Sleep Talk these days. This lets it absorb sleep moves and stops it from being a sitting duck when forced to rest. Raikou used to frequently use Roar, but this has fallen out of favour. Dropping Sleep Talk has serious opportunity cost. Raikou is a staple on defensive teams and can be paired with Zapdos for a double electric assault. Raikou is a very common and effective Pokemon that every team needs a plan for. Raikou is also great in GSC Ubers. Just like in OU, Raikou is an effective special attacker and answer to Pokemon like Zapdos and Vaporeon. Raikou is one of the better responses to Mewtwo. It can also answer Ho-Oh and Lugia. Crunch is more popular in Ubers. Crunch's special defense drops can let Raikou break through Pokemon like Mewtwo, Celebi, and opposing Raikou, making Crunch Raikou pretty annoying for stall teams. Roar is also viable in Ubers. This lets Raikou rack up spikes damage and stop growth past Jolteon. Entei struggles to make an impact in GSC OU. Entei is only effective at using Sunny Day. With the sun up, Entei's Fire Blast hits harder and it gets to use Solar Beam. Entei also has Hidden Power Fighting off its high attack stat for Blissey and Tyranitar. Entei can tank hits from Pokemon like Gengar and Exeggutor if needed. Entei has the best Zapdos matchup out of all the Sunny Day users. It speed ties with it and isn't weak to Thunder like Moltres is. It's also better against rock types because of Solar Beam. Entei is just not reliable though. It struggles to find switching opportunities and has limited defensive utility. It needs the sun up to be a threat and still struggles to break Snorlax even with sun up. Moltres is often preferred as a Sunny Day user because of its higher power and ground immunity. Suicune is blessed with incredible natural bulk on both the physical and special side. Suicune also has just two weaknesses, and neither are on the physical side. Suicune is able to combat Pokemon like Nidoking, Tyranitar, Rhydon, Charizard, and non-Curse or Belly Drum Snorlax. Its incredible bulk and typing make it difficult to force out for most Pokemon. Suicune is so bulky that it survives explosion from Pokemon like Exeggutor or Golem at full HP. Suicune is an effective Raikou partner, with the two of them complementing each other well and beating each other's checks. Suicune, on its own, is a pretty good Pokemon. The problem is that it's incredibly hard to fit it onto a team. On defensive teams, it's challenging to fit all the necessary elements and then fit Suicune. In addition to Snorlax, you want Skarmory, you want Rapid Spin, you want Spikes, you want Zapdos or Raikou, and you want a Firelax check. Suicune doesn't fit in anywhere here. Suicune isn't really necessary for stall, and it's not great at any one thing in particular. Aside from that, Suicune is switched into and forced out by Zapdos and Raikou, and doesn't pressure Snorlax much. Oh, and don't bother with Suicune on offense, it's a momentum sink. Don't bother with Suicune in Ubers either, it's outclassed by Pokemon like Lugia. Tyranitar is an elite Pokemon in GSC OU. Tyranitar's typing, great move pool, and excellent stats lets it play several different roles. Tyranitar has natural resistances to normal and fire, in addition to a psychic immunity. Tyranitar beats Firelax and Curse plus Rest Talk Snorlax with Roar. It also resists the common explosion. Tyranitar has Star Pursuit of its respectable special attack stat for Dark Weak Pokemon. Because it can pursue ghost types, it can support Mono Snorlax and Rapid Spin users. Rock Slide off of Tyranitar's massive attack stat, the highest in OU, hits Pokemon like Zapdos and Jinx. Tyranitar also has Earthquake for rock and poison types. It also puts far more pressure on Raikou. Tyranitar can run an incredibly threatening mix set. All-out attacking Tyranitar threatens to rip teams up with its coverage moves. It can run Dynamic Punch, Crunch, Flamethrower or Fire Blast, and even Surf. Screech is also an option to put more pressure on Pokemon like Snorlax. Tyranitar can also use a Curse plus Roar set. This set beats up on and beats non-Earthquake Snorlax and can't be phased by Skarmory because it's slower after using Curse. Roar lets Tyranitar win Curse Wars. Tyranitar is a highly effective and versatile Pokemon. It fits onto many different teams. Its typing and access to Pursue lets it provide utility, and it can be a big threat itself with its Mix sets, Curse sets, or Screech sets. It's not all rosy for Tyranitar. Its massive fighting weakness is exploited by Machamp and Dynamic Punch users. It's also weak to water and ground. Other normal resistant Pokemon can be preferred over it. Golem and Steelix offer an electric immunity and explosion, and Golem has rapid spin. That's not it for Tyranitar though. It is also just as, if not more powerful in GSC Ubers. Curse is Tyranitar's primary set in Ubers. With Curse and Roar, it can beat Snorlax, Ho-Oh, Lugia and Mewtwo without Dynamic Punch or Hidden Power Water. Curse Tyranitar is an effective anti-offense tool. It can also hit Mew, Mewtwo and Celebi with its Stab Crunch. Tyranitar demands immense respect in GSC Ubers. Its Screech and Mix sets in OU can also be explored in GSC Ubers, albeit with different kinds of moves. Lugia is the single bulkiest Pokemon in the game. Its typing and move pool also grant it incredible longevity. It is immune to spikes and has Recover to heal itself whenever it likes. Lugia's incredible longevity means it doesn't even mind Toxic that much. Toxic stops it from being paralysed or put to sleep by Snorlax. Lugia's incredible physical bulk lets it combat almost all physical attackers, including Snorlax. Lugia has Whirlwind to counter set up Pokemon and rack up Spikes damage. With Curse, Lugia not only boosts its physical defense, but also the power of its Aeroblast. Aeroblast's higher than normal critical hit chance gives Lugia better odds at blasting through Pokemon like Barry or Mewtwo with a crit. Lugia can also run a more supportive set. This set runs Surfer, Rock and Ground types, in addition to Toxic. Toxic is annoying for Cloyster, Zapdos, opposing Lugia and Mewtwo. Lugia's ability to answer Snorlax, as well as its general bulk and longevity, make it appealing for more balanced and defensive teams. Lugia has serious issues though. Aeroblast, its best means of dealing damage, only has 8 PP. This is very unideal, especially when you have common flying resistant Pokemon like Zapdos, Raikou, Tyranitar, Steelix and Golem. It takes multiple Curse uses to start seriously threatening teams with Aeroblast. You have to be very careful when clicking Aeroblast. Lugia is often just left clicking Whirlwind with the Curse set. While supporting Lugia is definitely annoying, you can very reasonably make the case that Lugia is the weakest of the Ubers. Ho-Oh can be a very obnoxious Pokemon in GSC Ubers. Like Lugia, Ho-Oh has incredible longevity. It is immune to spikes and has 32 uses of Recover. Ho-Oh's typing and incredible special bulk lets it combat Pokemon like Mewtwo, Steelix and Heracross. It's able to soft check many Pokemon in general. Ho-Oh is arguably the best Mewtwo answer in the game. Ho-Oh is a very effective user of Toxic, with it threatening the Toxic immune Steel types with Flamethrower. With Whirlwind, Ho-Oh can phase out a +1 Snorlax and rack up Spikes damage. Ho-Oh's combination of Whirlwind, Toxic and Flamethrower can be seriously hard to deal with, especially for defensive teams. Ho-Oh is capable of taking games over. Ho-Oh pairs very well with Pokemon like Raikou or Celebi on balanced and defensive teams. Ho-Oh should generally stick to its standard Flamethrower Toxic Whirlwind set, everything else is gimmicky. Don't get fooled by Sacred Fire, the APP kills its viability. Ho-Oh has a few issues to overcome. It greatly struggles with the common Tyranitar, and is pressured by electric types like Zapdos, Jolteon and Raikou. Ho-Oh doesn't mind Toxic that much because of its longevity, but paralysis or sleep are much more annoying for it. Ho-Oh has to be wary of self-destruct or explosion on Pokemon like Mewtwo. Here we are, the final Pokemon. Celebi is a very useful Pokemon in GSC UUBRs. With base 100 in every stat, Celebi is very naturally bulky. Its typing grants it resistances to water, electric and ground. Celebi's longevity is bolstered by the always incredible and very spammable Recover. Celebi is able to withstand hits from Pokemon like Cursed Tyranitar, Vaporeon and Zapdos. It threatens the former two with Hidden Power Grass. Heal Bell is an incredibly useful tool in the status-infested Ubers. Celebi can wake up sleeping Snorlax or Tyranitar, rid a teammate of inflicted Toxic or Lovely Kiss, and even thaw out a frozen Pokemon. Celebi can use Leech Seed to force switches and annoy Pokemon like Snorlax. Leech Seed can also be used to combat Growth past Jolteon. Celebi can also use Defense Curl to improve its Snorlax matchup. As with the previously mentioned Ho-Oh and Lugia, Celebi is an appealing option for balanced and defensive teams. Celebi's biggest issue is its passivity. Its Hidden Power Grass is weak unless it's hitting super effectively. Yeah, Celebi can wall Zapdos, but it can't threaten him much back. Celebi's passivity can invite in dangerous Pokemon like offensive Mewtwo and Jolteon. And that is that. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. It took a lot out of me to make this and part 1, but I'm very proud of what I managed to do with both of these. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Also, shoutouts to Sophie again.